North Carolina has now dropped 3 of 5 and still has 6 remaining regular season games left. What do they need to do to get back on track? Or can they?
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Thursday, February 15th, 2024. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shade, joined by, as we are every week, by our guy, Coach Bill Robinson, the head coach of the Milligan University Buffaloes. We're actually recording on a Wednesday. It's game day for Coach, and he's still with us. Coach, thanks for making time. We want to thank you, everydayers, for making Locked On Tar Heels your first listen or watch of the day to get your Tar Heels content every single day. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Coming up today, Coach is going to try to help us unpack some of the recent Tuesday struggles. What a weird thing that's been. Looking at some of the breakdown of the strangeness of RJ's shooting differences between 2 and 3 right now, as well as the bench usage and what that needs to look like or why it looks like it does. But before we get to all of that, our guy, the Nintendo Nerd, asked a great question on the live postcast after the Syracuse game on Tuesday night. And I actually wanted to save it for today's show because I thought it was a great conversation point that Coach and I could have to kind of frame up and give context to where things stand right now with 6 remaining regular season games. So, Coach, Nintendo Nerd's question read thusly: what does this team need to do to get back on track? And more importantly, can they? So, Coach, I want to take those actually kind of separately because they really are 2 different questions there. Let's start with what they need to do to get back on track, in your opinion.
Yeah, I think the adversity is obviously going to be evident in every game. There's going to be, or every season, and you face it from possession to possession. You face it from game to game. You face it from week to week. There's stretches, and they're obviously in a stretch right now where they've gone through some losses, and they have to find a way, in boxing terms, to get back off the mat. Been watching a Buffalo Bills documentary about them losing 4 in a row, and it was almost like the 4th year, nobody wanted them to get there because, they had failed 3 times in a row. But is it really failure to get to the Super Bowl? Is it really failure? We're number 1 still in the conference. Is it really failure right now? We're going through a really tough stretch. So they've been knocked down. Can they get back up? Yes, this team is a high character, great coaching staff, lots of talent. There's no doubt they can get back up. How? How do you do that? When I go through a stretch like this with my team, what I like to do is go back through my notes and find an early season practice, maybe a defensive, because obviously the defensive with Syracuse game, that was the big problem. Let's go back. Let's find a practice where we really emphasized our defensive stuff. Let's do almost the exact same practice. Let's put them through the exact same things, because defensively, they've gone through stretches where they've been great. So let's go find back to what we did well. Go back to the fundamentals, go back to the basics, and then let's start again. And that's where I personally would go. Obviously, nobody's asking me. Hubert's not giving the call, but at the same time, this is what I believe they're doing today. They're going to try to keep it positive, keep it upbeat. One of the things we like to do after a tough loss is we'll play a lot of music in practice, just to kind of bring some energy, give something. Let them pick what they want to listen to. It's not going to be the 80s music that I want to listen to, but it'll be something that something that gives, oh yeah, I like this song, something to get them bouncing a little bit, get them something a little upbeat, where then, hey, let's forget about what's happened and let's focus on where we need to go forward.
I like that, Coach, because I think the old school probably coaching philosophy would be, no, now we need to keep them under the thumb and we got to buckle down. And I love that thought process and hearing it from you as a coach of like, no, I think there are definitely times when the response is to let the kids be kids. Sometimes that can be the most healthy thing to be able to do. And Coach, you talked about going back and trying to find some things with the defense. Are you noticing as you watch this team play, is there something tangibly different the Tar Heels are doing on defense that is hurting them? Are teams finding better ways to attack Carolina and that's what's hurt? Like where is the adjustment on the defensive end?
I think the combination of things last night is you had 2 great offensive players who make tough shots. There were a lot of shots last night that were contested. They were off balance, and they made shots. And they made shots at home. And you shoot better at home, and that's just the reality because they practice in that gym. They're comfortable in that gym. We do the exact. Most teams do that. They shoot much better at home. Then once that momentum gets going, then you have guys who don't normally make threes, which happened last night.
That's right.
You have guys who all of a sudden the confidence starts to grow. And when the confidence starts to grow on the offensive end, then the defense maybe starts to doubt a little bit. And then there are more open shots. There are more offensive rebounds because the energy level has dropped. And that's when it's a perfect storm. And that's what I feel like happened last night at the offensive end for Syracuse and the defense for the Heels.
Yeah, kind of a perfect storm moment of the defense not being there and Syracuse just hitting a bunch of shots, including guys that often typically don't. Coach Davis even talked about that in postgame. And Coach, you talked about it. This is actually somewhere I wanted to go next. So thanks for making my segue for me. I don't know that people accurately appreciate just how difficult it is to win on the road. I know that one of these 3 losses in these 3 straight Tuesdays was that home loss to Clemson, just the second home loss ever to the Tigers. But Coach, the loss before that was down in Atlanta at Georgia Tech. This loss up at Syracuse, interestingly enough, both to first-year ACC coaches. So not looking forward to playing Notre Dame here in a couple weeks. But can you just give us an understanding of or an appreciation for just how difficult it is, whether it's because of the travel schedule, whether it's because of the sheer cold of upstate New York, whether it is the home gym for the other team, as you discussed earlier? Just help us understand.
Yeah, I think it's part of just being comfortable. You're sleeping in your own bed. You're having your own pregame meal. You're surrounded by your people. You've got not just your people, but you've got your friends, your family. You got everybody there to support you. You're in a very familiar place. We shoot every day in our practice in our gyms where we get very familiar with the surroundings. Carrier Dome is it's big, and it's not, even though the Smith Center is big, it's not 80,000 seats big. And just the background's different and everything's different, and it's just a different feel, and it makes it a lot harder to win on the road. We've got a team in our league right now, good team, the middle of the pack team. They've won 8 or 9 games at home. They have not won a game yet. They're 0-8 or 0-9 on the road. And
Jeez.
How do you make sense of that? And it's hard to figure out. I think the Syracuse situation was different too, because they had been embarrassed. They had been embarrassed on the road and Carolina didn't think about that. Yeah, we beat them. We beat them pretty easily. I don't think they took them lightly. I think they still attacked them the way as if, hey, this is an opponent that can beat us. But when you get embarrassed, your pride says, hey, I got to be able to, we got to change this. And I wish we could have a tally of how many times you hear somebody say, protect this house. This is our house. We're going to protect this house. But that's what people do at home. And they don't want to lose at home. I also have one other thing that I just think is crazy, but I've got my master's degree. I'd never want to get my doctorate, but if I did, I would love to do a doctorate on games that are close when somebody banks in a 3 late.
Thank you. Yes.
Because we've talked about this for years. My son and I talk about it all the time. When you see somebody banking a 3, late shot clock in a close game, that team almost always wins. I bet it's 90% or more. So when I saw that, I thought, oh no. I immediately said, the momentum's going the other way, and that never, that's never a good sign. But it's little stupid things like that, like the Tuesday thing, that just seems to have some kind of merit to it.
Yeah. Coach, I'm right with you. I immediately, when that happened, I put in my game notes, like, we just lost the basketball game. And I hope I didn't jinx it, but seriously, let's recontextualize that. Carolina had just taken their first lead of the second half on the play before on an RJ Davis layup. And then somehow Starling gets off that ridiculous shot, which Mondo did a great job, I thought, getting out and denying, not too far to where he was going to get a blow by. And Starling knocked, it was the same thing with Sturdivant down in Atlanta. He hit that one in the Georgia Tech win. And on nights like that, sometimes you just have to tip your hat and say, it ain't our night. And that is what it is. Now, here's part of the good news, Coach. Carolina is in good company, or I guess maybe bad company, with these road losses. AP top 10 teams on the road at unranked teams this season, as of the end of Tuesday night's play, have 34 wins and 35 losses. That's a 49.3% winning percentage. Last year, it was over 70%. The year before, over 70%. So there's a weird thing going on, some sort of phenomenon this year where AP top 10 teams are losing more than half of the games on the road at unranked opponents this year. So it's not just the Tar Heels. Like Kansas, for example, has lost 4 such games. And it's not like it was Houston and Baylor or something. Coach, those games that they've lost at unranked opponents are UCF, West Virginia, Kansas State, and Texas Tech, and they still have to go to Oklahoma. They still have to go to Baylor. They still have to go to Houston. So maybe that can be a little bit of comfort for the Tar Heels, is knowing that they're in very good national company, but you'd like to separate yourself, and they just haven't been able to do so.
Yeah, the big thing for me was watching, obviously, we're 2 hours from Knoxville, to see Tennessee go to Texas A&M and get absolutely hammered, and then Texas A&M go to Vanderbilt and lose at Vanderbilt. So it's just, again, it's hard enough to win college basketball games as it is. But then when you go on the road, and if you're a little bit overconfident, or you just find a team that's hot and wants to defend their house, I mean, that's, to me, is the huge difference right now.
Preach that all day long, Coach. I hope you all heard that, what he just said. So can this team get back on track? 100% they can. Do not freak out. Do not get off the train. Things will be okay. This team needs to win on Saturday against Virginia Tech and then have a week off to rest up before they have 5 more regular season games, including a 3-game home stretch. So big opportunities there. Now, interestingly, RJ Davis lately has had some serious splits between his 2-point shooting and his 3-point shooting. What on earth is going on there? We're going to try to unpack it in just a minute. Right after I tell you that this episode's brought to you by FanDuel. North Carolina, the wait is almost over, because FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, is coming to the Tar Heel state. Starting on March 11th, you'll finally be able to bet on all your favorite teams in all your favorite sports. With FanDuel, there's a bunch of different ways for you to get in on the action. You can bet on everything from money line to over-unders to which team will win the next Tobacco Road rivalry this season. All of it on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, with live betting, you can even pick which player will put up the next bucket or the one after that. So see for yourself why FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon so you can be the first to know when FanDuel goes live in North Carolina. Once again, that's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel. Coach, we've noticed an interesting trend with RJ Davis lately with his shooting. Let's just look at it the last 4 games. And what I'm trying to figure out is if similar to, is it just some random coincidence like the Tuesday thing that's going on right now, or is there something to this? So let me paint the numbers for us, and then we'll have a discussion about it. In Carolina's last 4 games, starting with the Duke game, which is interesting, RJ Davis from 2 has shot 3 of 11, 2 of 10, 1 of 8, and 3 of 6. That's 25.7% combined in those 4 games. In that exact same stretch, Coach, from 3, he is 2 of 3, 5 of 12, 5 of 11, and 4 of 11. That's 43.2% from 3 in that same stretch. So, Coach, and we'll look back at his 2-point shooting in the 4 games before that here in a second. Is there something to this dichotomy, this separation, these splits, or do you just chalk it up to the variability of sports over a 4-game stretch?
I think it has to do with the defensive philosophies and how things are changing with him. Part of it's his decision making, and maybe the feel that in games that they're losing, he needs to make plays. So when they're down and he feels like he's got to make a play with the ball in his hands, people are going to run him off the line, and hopefully not going to give him an open look. Then all of a sudden now he's in amongst the trees at 6 foot, trying to make a play over or around big, long, athletic defenders. I think it really has affected him. That's what we like to do with smaller guards that are very explosive offensively. We don't try to put a guard on them. We like to put a forward on them. Put somebody with length, somebody athletic, and length really bothers smaller guards. I think if you somebody like an Allen Iverson, you don't want to put somebody just the same height as him. We want to put somebody long and athletic who can maybe make a misstep, still be able to recover, but every shot is contested over length. That makes it a lot harder. I think that's what he's facing right now. Is just the bigger guards. Syracuse guards are bigger. You know,
6'4", both of them. Yeah,
bigger guards than he's used to maybe. And I do think it's about decision making. I think he's pressing, trying to make plays, and that's affected his shot selection, and that will ultimately affect his shooting percentage.
I think a great example of what you're talking about from the Carolina side of things would be remembering back to Coach Davis's first year when Kihei Clark was still at Virginia. Carolina did not throw RJ or Caleb on him. It was Leaky Black that was out there guarding Kihei Clark. And that completely took off the head of the snake for the Cavs in that game. And I thought that was a brilliant and shrewd move by Coach Davis there. But that to me is a great Carolina example of what you're talking about, Coach. And so when we look back to the 4 games before Duke, that would be Georgia Tech, Florida State, Wake, and Boston College. RJ's 2-point percentage in those games was a combined 58.3%. So almost or more than double the percentage he's shooting now. So is it a situation like I feel like a lot of times what happens is a team will give everyone the blueprint. So Duke puts some length on RJ, guards him a little bit differently. And then maybe that means Clemson, Miami, and Syracuse, the 3 opponents after that, see that blueprint now on tape and say, oh, this is how we go attack RJ Davis. And you notice what else has coincided with that same streak, Coach? Armando Bacot, for the first time all season, has 4 straight double-doubles in these exact 4 games where RJ has gone. So previously this season, we've seen teams really trying to cut off Armando, allowing RJ a little more space. Has the script now flipped and people are content to let Mondo get a little bit more of his and to stop RJ? Is there something to that?
I think there definitely is. I think that's part of their defense. The philosophies have changed. Armando, obviously preseason All-American. Hey, we got to stop him. We got to, make sure we defend him inside. RJ came, out of the chute just playing great. He's still been playing great. But I think the defense's philosophies have switched a little bit. I also think if you look back, I don't have the access to RJ's shots, chart, but I'd like to see his shot chart and see kind of where some of these shots are coming, because I think in those 4 games when he was shooting well, 3 of those were wins. Carolina's getting stops. They're getting transition opportunities. Now he's getting easy looks, maybe a run out, maybe a layup, maybe a mid-range, shot in transition before defense really gets set. But I think a lot more of those, the misses that he's had have been against set defenses within the half-court offense, where, again, things maybe have broken down, and their late shot clock. And when they're late shot clock also, now he's creating, they're going to run him off the line. Now all of a sudden he's got to get up something late. It affects the shot selection and the shot percentage.
And 2 of those 4 games, the Clemson and Syracuse games, are against teams that chose to play more zone possessions than we're used to seeing from them, which factors into what you're saying about having to go up against more set defenses. Really interesting. So, Coach, often I ask you to put yourself in Hubert Davis's shoes, and I'll do that again. If you're Hubert Davis and his coaching staff, what's the next chess move here? Because it's not about I make a move, you make a counter move, and I give up. Sports is about I make a move, you make a counter move, I counter your counter, and then you counter the counter of the counter and all that. So, Coach Rob, what's the next counter? How do we get RJ going back in the way that he was?
Yeah, I think we're adding some more zone stuff today. I think we're going to talk, whether it's new stuff or whether it's just being able to execute better. It seemed that to me, again, I didn't get a chance to watch the whole entire game, but I did get to watch the last 6 minutes after practice. And it seemed that they were running the same set, the same zone set. I'd like to see more movement. I'd like to see the ball go side to side. I'd like to see just more of being able to get the ball in guys' hands, moving action, not just standing still. So I think that's one of the things they have to adjust to. The other thing is you got to go back to what you do well and execute better. The team we play tonight is going to know everything we run. So what we've done is we've taken a set that we really like, one of our favorites that they know we're going to run, and instead of going right, we're going to go left. Expecting us to come, we've got to throw it to the wings instead of stagger off the other side. Well, instead of setting off stagger off the other side, having that guard come back to the same side and kind of misdirection it back. So it's the same call. We're tweaking it. We're inverting it in a way. Instead of setting a down screen, maybe we're setting a back screen. Instead of setting a flare, maybe we're setting a pin down. So we're at this time of the year in February where it's those little tweaks where people think they know what you're doing. And sometimes it's better when they think that you know what you're doing if you
Exactly.
have a counter. And all of a sudden you're going backdoor where you've never gone backdoor, or you're getting a dribble handoff where it used to be, a pin down. Now all of a sudden things are different. And then it gives your team confidence when you're able to get a bucket off of a play like that. And it makes the other team question a little bit because, well, coach told me that they were going to do this and then they didn't. Now all of a sudden, well, maybe coach doesn't know what he's talking about. So those are the little tweaks I think that Carolina's going to work on right now.
Yeah,
and that week off is going to be huge. That week off is going to be huge because that will give them time to be able to do a lot of what we're talking about right now. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're great, and you're spot on with that. And I love your point there. What I was going to say is, I think a lot of times people think big overt changes are what can be better. It's actually the subtle changes that trick your opponent into thinking they know what you're running, and then boom, you're gone in the other direction like you're talking about, and then they're flustered and don't know what's coming. That, to me, the subtle nuances is the beauty of it, but what makes it more difficult for the average fan watching to see those differences. But those are the things that can actually be more devastating to a defense that thinks they know what you're throwing at them. Coach, Carolina's bench usage has been trending way back towards Iron 5 status lately. Is this going to be sustainable for Carolina down the stretch? We'll talk about that in just a second. This episode's brought to you by Gametime. Folks, we're just about a month away from college basketball conference tournaments, and maybe you don't have tickets yet, but you think your team is going to make a wild run. Gametime is a perfect place to get last-minute tickets so that you don't miss out on that excitement. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, theater, and more events near you. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and a best price guarantee, Gametime is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. I love this feature that Gametime has. They've got a thing called zone deals. You pick the section, Gametime picks the seats. Big-time savings come along with that. Try it out. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime, where you can buy tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Again, that's $20 off your first purchase at Gametime with code LOCKEDON. Terms apply. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Coach Hubert Davis's use of the bench has been a big talking point in the first 3 years of his tenure in Chapel Hill. Coach, we know that we famously had the Iron 5 game. I think Adam Lucas was the one to coin that term following the win at Duke, in which Carolina ended Coach K's final home regular season game. But Iron 5 because the second half of that game, the 5 starters played literally the entire second half, which is still crazy to me when I think back on that. What a night, by the way. Wow. Okay. Anyway, Coach, earlier this season, it felt like Carolina was trending in a much better way with their bench usage. The percentages of minutes played were higher. The production from the bench was better, not just in scoring, but in intangible ways as well, in filling out the box score. This is actually one of the stats that I keep is I track bench usage in terms of minutes after each game. And you can just see as you look down the ledger of that, the percentage dwindling. As of the end of Tuesday night, Carolina on the season has now used their bench 23.3% of all minutes played. Coach, that is down to 331st in the nation out of 361 teams. Earlier this year, Carolina was in the 100s in this metric. Now they're trending back down to where they usually are, right around that Kansas and Bill Self level. So my question for us right now, why has this tapered off? On Tuesday night, even with Seth Trimble back, the bench only played a total of 28 minutes in that game.
There are many different factors to look at. One simple is fouls. A team that fouls a lot tends to have a lot more usage off the bench, and that's something people don't think about. But you get somebody who likes to foul, or you have play a system where a lot of trapping, a lot of fouls create more minutes for the bench guys.
Like a Florida State, is that a good example of that?
Because they're going to play a system in a way where you have maybe 10 guys that are interchangeable. It doesn't really matter, who's on the floor. You still got Your best players are going to play more minutes, but there's not as big a difference between your best and your worst. When you have guys that are all Americans, they're going to play major minutes. You're not going to take RJ off the floor. You're just not going to take Armando off the floor, even if they're in a situation where they haven't played maybe a great game. They've put stuff in the bank. And when I talk about the bank, we talk about that with our guys all the time. There's a bank, a daily bank, that it doesn't matter if it's spring pickup or whether it's in the weight room or whether it's 2 years ago when they first got here. Every little thing that they do that we see goes into a mental bank. And you make deposits daily or you make withdrawals daily. And I think everybody's saying, well, Cormac needs to sit. Cormac needs to sit. Cormac has banked so much stuff over his years that there's still enough in the bank that says he needs to be on the floor. His value is still, there. It may be less in the bank now than there was at the beginning of the season because he hasn't shot the ball great, but there's still enough in the bank to say he needs to play a certain amount of time. So I think that's part of it too. I also think that end of the season, as the season goes on, the bench shortens anyway. And you look at anybody's program, but now you got to the point where you have to win these games. You want your best players on the floor. And I think that's part of it. The other thing is we talk about is Bobby Knight, and love him, hate him. Bobby Knight was a brilliant basketball coach. And he talked about, he had a birdhouse. He didn't have a doghouse. People would say, well, why do you put this guy in the doghouse? He's not in a doghouse. He has to raise his level to get to the birdhouse. And if you don't raise yourself up to the birdhouse, then you don't play. And it's not a doghouse. My guy Paxton didn't play last against the Syracuse game. He didn't play. Well, he hasn't flown up high enough to get to that birdhouse right now. Doesn't mean he's not valuable. Doesn't mean he doesn't have stuff in the bank. He just needs to put more in for him to be able to get back on the floor.
Yeah. Same with Zayden High. No minutes from him. Just the 5 starters plus Seth and the Jae'lyn show from both Jae'lyns being out there in that game. So, Coach, as you look at this, I love your point there that maybe some folks don't recognize, like as the season wears on, you just naturally are going to continue to shrink and get more minutes out of your best guys, the guys that you rely on the most. Coach, is it a long-term problem with the starters logging so many minutes, or is it sustainable down the stretch? As we kind of alluded to earlier, Carolina plays Virginia Tech on Saturday at home, then has a week off before going to Charlottesville, the final road trip of longer than 10 miles, and then 3 back-to-back home games, and then just the trip to Duke. Obviously, the travel factors into this. Does RJ have enough juice left in those legs of his, Armando, all of these guys? Is the amount of minutes they're logging sustainable down the stretch of this season, not just in the 6 final regular season games, but also in the ACC tournament and then in NCAA tournament play as well?
Yeah, I think that gap, that week off is huge because you're going to play that Saturday, don't play again until the following Saturday. In my mind, again, I'm estimating at least a day off, maybe 2 days off, maybe a day off and a shooting day only. That's where you catch up some of those minutes, some of those legs. I would suspect that first Saturday game, that Virginia Tech game, you could see maybe an Iron 5 situation, knowing you got a full week off. You don't have to play again on Monday night or Tuesday night. So now you've got a chance to sit there and say, okay, as long as they're not in foul trouble, we're going to ride our horses as much as we can tonight because we got a whole week off. So those are the things that you factor in. I think that week not just helps them for next Saturday, but that helps them come tournament time, knowing that they're going to be able to get their legs back a little bit more.
Yeah, especially because coming up on the back end of that is a Saturday, Monday turnaround. A game, by the way, on that Monday that you and I will both be at, Coach Rob. That's exciting, by the way, folks. Milligan is playing Carolina's JV team that Monday ahead of the Miami game. And so Coach Rob will be in the building. I'm making the trip. And so that's going to be a lot of fun to get to see my alma mater play these Tar Heels. So I love it. Very excited for that. Coach, one final question on this bench stuff. How do you go about striking a balance of X number of minutes or X number of exertion of RJ or Armando is worth them staying in the game versus a replacement player? You think about wins above replacement in baseball, like that kind of thing. Is there a minutes number you're looking for? Is it just an eyeball thing? Is it a what to determine, hey, we can ride RJ this long, and then at that point it's got to be Seth because RJ's Seth at 95% right now is better than X% of RJ. How do you strike that balance?
Yeah, I've got a pretty cool system because I got my son who works the minutes chart on my bench. So he sits closest to me and he tells me, hey, this guy's next. That tells me that I know who has to come out. Now I've got to figure out who I want to go in for that guy. And he keeps track. And we don't want our guys to play more than 30, 32 minutes a game.
Okay.
But it's almost like a pitch count in baseball where you have maybe high stress pitches versus low stress pitches. So you have a guy who maybe throw 100 pitches, but he's never, he's had maybe, an average of one guy on base per inning. They really haven't been high stresses. But then you got a guy who throws, the same amount of pitches, but every inning there's people on base. There's different types of minutes too. So in these high stress games, it's going to be different. And you have somebody like RJ who when he's on the floor, he's going to be making plays. So he's got the ball in his hands a ton. So he's going to have more high stress minutes, but he's also in shape, and he's the type of kid that wants to be on.
That's right.
Let's be honest. If you asked RJ, he said, I want to play 40 minutes a game. And he probably could, but it's one of those things where you don't want to do that early in the year. Come tournament time, especially NCAA tournament. Again, if I'm coaching him, he wants to play 40 minutes a game in an NCAA tournament game. He's going to play 40 minutes a game.
Okay.
As long as he's able to do that. But I think it's different for each guy.
Okay.
It doesn't necessarily have to be equal. We're trying to be fair about it.
That's great insight, Coach. Thank you. We did have an Iron 3 situation at Syracuse on Tuesday night with RJ, Harrison, and Cormac each playing the entirety of the second half. So we'll see what happens on Saturday against Virginia Tech with Tyler Nickel coming back to town. By the way, Virginia's all-time high school leading scorer. Folks, great show. Always great to have Coach Rob on. Thank you, brother, as always. That's it for today's episode of Locked On Tar Heels. Thanks for making us, again, your first listen or watch. Come join the Locked On Tar Heels Discord. We'd love to have you. The link is in the show notes. It's free. Always a great time there. If you haven't subscribed to the show, please do so, both on video and audio. If you're watching, smash the like button so we know you are here. It'd also mean a lot if you would leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. That really helps spread the word. It's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. We'll be back with you tomorrow to help you get ready for that Virginia Tech game. Coach Pat Kilby will be with me on that one, just rolling through our coaches. Love having both of you guys as part of this show. We'll talk to you then, but until tomorrow, peace.